Calling to order the regular meeting of the Albany Unified School District, reconvening to open session. May we have a roll call?
Superintendent Wells.
Here.
President Trutain.
Here.
Vice President Doss.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Hinckley.
Here.
Trustee Duran.
Here.
And student board members are excused for this evening.
Okay. Now we're on item 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a flag in the main office, so if you want to join me to recite the pledge, we'll sort of do it in this direction. All right. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to the reading of the AUSD mission and vision statement. Without our student board members, it will need to come to the board. Vice President Doss, can I ask you to start with the mission and vision?
Sure. Mission and vision statement. The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Thank you very much. Can we go around to state our meeting norms? Let's see how it goes with maybe 2 apiece. Trustee Clark, would you begin?
Number 1, maintain a focus on what is best for our students. Number 2, show respect, never dismiss / devalue others.
3, be willing to compromise. 4, disagree when necessary agreeably.
5, make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind, while others are allowed to express their points of view. And number 6, participate by building on the thoughts of a fellow board member.
Number 7, make a commitment to open communication and honesty, no surprises. 8, commit the time necessary to govern effectively.
9, be collaborative. 10, maintain confidentiality, which leads to the building of trust. And I'll just go ahead and do 11, look upon history as lessons learned, focus on the present and the future.
Thank you very much. All right. There was no action taken in closed session. And that moves us to approval of the agenda. Board, are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I would look for a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. Next, we have the consent calendar. Okay. Are there any questions or changes to the consent calendar? No? If not, then I would ask for a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the consent calendar passes. And that brings us to superintendent and board member reports. Superintendent Wells, could you start?
Sure, I'll start. Last week was a very challenging week for us. We were, dealing with the air quality issues and many uncertainties around that. And so we had an opportunity to put some guidelines out, and I want to call those guidelines interim guidelines. And I tell you why. Because we want to make sure we're inclusive and collaborative when we have guidelines for the district. So ATA and others agreed to sit down and work with us and give feedback on those guidelines. So it's something that we created together and that we will own it. And so I'm looking forward to meeting with ATA representative next Tuesday to start that process. So it'll be something that unique to Albany, and that will bring us clarity and certainty of what we do when we have days like that. Many folks have said this is our new normal. I hope it's not, but unfortunately it may be. Whether it is or isn't, we need to be ready for it. The air quality also brought about some anxiety for our big day known as October 31st, AKA Halloween and all the festivities. And we were so fortunate and blessed to have really good air quality that day. And we have lots of wonderful, beautiful pictures with kids being able to participate in something that they were looking so forward to. And so it made us all leave Friday evening with big smiles. And that couldn't have happened without the committed staff and teachers who came together, and parents, these mini parades. For those who had a chance to be out on Halloween anytime during the day on Solano Avenue, and it was the first time for me, I was just in awe with all the festivities up and down the street. So as a newbie, I was just like, wow, what a neat community. We've have a number of great things going on throughout our district, and we have some things that need to be addressed yesterday. And one of our biggest crises right now is what we call our para crisis. And we have issues with our para. One, it's really hard to recruit and retain, and that's incongruent with our mission in terms of wanting to retain, recruit and retain the best and the brightest. But you have to be competitive salary-wise. And we finally, without divulging too much, the immediate future looks bright. I'm just saying we're working with the union leadership, and I'm happy to say that I am confident we're going to end up in a place where we could be very competitive, and we can go out and recruit and retain, and finally really address this big crisis we have with our paras. So that's just an FYI, and that concludes the superintendent report, Madam Chair, for this evening.
Thank you. That's very good news. I just wanted to briefly report that I was here last Monday night on the 28th in the Little Theater, where our teacher, Miriam Walden, did a fantastic teach-in related to education funding in California. It was well attended. I think there were 40 people there. There were teachers, there were students, there were community members. We all learned about the crazy history of education funding in California and the system that we still have, which is still pretty crazy. And we also, had a call to action that we needed to all participate as a community to help get the money we need to fund teachers and classrooms so that we can teach kids. I also just wanted to mention briefly that I see Heather Duncan in our audience, and I wanted to, as she is moving on to take a directorship position in another district, I just wanted to thank Heather for her years of service here and let you know how much we appreciate your work. Hand it over to Vice President Doss.
I want to second what Kim said. I don't know if you know this, but I'm the one that started that clap. You deserve it. I spent all of Halloween at Marin, and I had a lot of fun. Watching the kindergartners do their parade through the classrooms was a lot of fun, and just enjoying all of the different costumes. I was talking to this one kindergartner that was dressed up as a TV, that had no idea that TVs actually used to look like that with the knobs and the antennas. He kept asking why the box wasn't flat, which was super funny because he was imagining, the flat screen that his parents probably have. So that was really cool. And then I stuck around and helped in the classrooms, and then got to see the older kids in their parades. So that was just a lot of fun. Halloween is one of my favorite days. So just seeing the kids enjoy themselves there was great. We talked at some previous board meetings about a trophy case for the science club and all the great things that they were doing. And so over the weekend, I actually was doing some yard work, and so I noticed like a post on next door that said, come get some free dirt for your yard. And so I was like, great. So I signed up and I went there, and then of course it was the house of one of the high school students who is on this science team, and recognized me and asked about his trophy case. So it was great just to get a chance to talk with them, and he was excited about the things they were doing, and talked about some of his plans for after high school and things like that. So it was just great to kind of have that conversation and to see the excitement that the young man had about school. And so just wanted to report those two good things.
I'll just add, I was also at a Halloween parade at Ocean View, the last Halloween parade at the current Ocean View Elementary School with our little tiny group of 3 grades. But it was the sort of cohesion around Ocean View, especially spread over all these campuses, is pretty cool. And we have our international potluck this Friday, November 8th. So I'm excited to see these traditions continuing. And there's excitement among the kids, at least, building about moving in February. So
The board recently passed a resolution, United Against Hate Week. And moving forward, the first day is Sunday, November 17th. So I would like to invite the board members and the public to come to, it's going to probably be a film showing. The film, we haven't decided what the film's going to be, but it's going to happen at the Belmont Village on Sunday. I believe it's 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So I'll broadcast that out again and hope that we can see some of you there. And there's going to be a follow-up discussion by we believe a director of a film.
Great, thank you very much. I wanted to mention that I was also at the Halloween parade at Cornell, so we got all of the elementaries covered, and so between us we got to see all of the costumes, which were just amazing. There was also a fall band concert in the Little Theater last week, and as usual, our music program is just stunning. The kids continue to impress all of us so much. And with that, I will conclude the reports, and we can move on to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Seeing no one, we can move forward to item 11, review and action.
I have something.
Oh, whoops. Here we go.
I thought someone else was going to say something. Thank you for the kind words, but I really want to honor and celebrate Liz coming over to Cornell. She's going to do such a wonderful job, and I'm so happy that she's coming. And I want to celebrate you, Liz, because you're fantastic. So congratulations. And I can't wait.
I just want to say thank you, Heather. And I also just want to thank the whole leadership team for supporting me. And I'm really excited to be going to Cornell. And I also wanted to mention that we had a great Annex Halloween parade. And we were welcomed by Debrill and the 8th graders and a whole group of people over at AMS, and we paraded over to the blacktop and around, and they played music for us, and it was wonderful. It was a great coming together of the two schools. So that was a wonderful new tradition for at least a couple years.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you caught me there and that you stepped up. Both of you deserve acknowledgement tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to review and action. Our first item is 11-1, resolution number 2019-20-09, AUSD Board of Education calling an election, establishing specifications of the election order, and requesting consolidation with the statewide primary election occurring on March 3rd, 2020. CBO Kim, I turn this over to you.
Thank you. This item is to review and approve Resolution 2019-29 for Measure LL Partial Tax Replacement Ballot Measure. So at the last board meeting, board requests staff to bring a draft resolution with the increase of $130 for 6 years. Replacing the partial tax with an increase of $130 will generate additional revenue of approximately about $700,000 annually. Now this item is for the board to approve.
Okay. Board members, I think that everybody's read this resolution. If we can bring it up, I know that one board member, even after this thing had been read by so many different eyes, if we can go back to page 1, unbelievably, a board member caught a typo in the second whereas from the bottom. Okay. Whereas the voters of Albany have consistently supported the district's excellent education program and approving parcel taxes for school operations and bonds for school renovation and modernization. So I did speak with our legal counsel today, and if the board would like to change that word approving to something more consistent with the grammar of the sentence, that is allowable. We can't. We would need to bring the resolution back again if there were any changes in, in content. But we could make this change if the board so desires.
Do we include it as just part of the motion, or should it be
Yes,
separate?
it should be stated as part of the motion, and the motion at the on the board backup would need to be read as is in the board backup with that addition to satisfy the legal requirements. But this is open for discussion. I think that the council was able to incorporate the concerns of last week, and I wanted to thank Sarah, who spent a lot of time crafting the 75-word statement to make it very clean, as well as the findings and the purpose.
And it's 74 words.
Well, wait, we did add the "and," so it may be,
Oh, right.
yeah, so now it is 75, I think.
So it might be helpful too, just to let the other board members know what has happened since we met last time. So we took the feedback from the board in the last meeting, including feedback that 2 sections had not been modified from 2014, so they weren't quite up to date. So the whereas clauses were revised just to bring it up to date, and unfortunately left a grammatical error in there. And then the short part of the ballot language, which is first on page 7, was revised pretty significantly, not to change the meaning at all, but to make it flow better, so it sounds more similar to the measure on that we passed in 2014. And we had both the lawyer and what was his name from the polling firm?
Well, Charles Heath was our consultant from TBWB.
Right. So he also helped sort of make sure that the analysis from the poll fed into the language of this section, as well as the longer version of this. And then we also made a lot of changes to the findings section on page 8, which was also had not been revised since 2014. So mostly we changed the language to reflect the fact that we actually have had a significant restoration of state funding, but our costs have not, that funding restoration has not kept pace with our costs. Whereas the old language was written right after the state had made significant budget cuts, so the wording was quite different. So we changed that and added a few other clauses to reflect our current circumstance. And all of the technical language is exactly the same as it was when it came to the board last time.
Thank you. Trustee Clark, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it matters, but there's a lot of spacing issues in some of the documents where Is that just the format that it came out on the iPads, or? And
Yeah,
I didn't want to nitpick on every single. You know,
Uh-huh.
there was quite a few. But if it's
I think that the format issues and the spacing will be
Okay.
corrected when it goes to the county and is incorporated in the ballot booklet.
thank you.
Okay, yeah. And with that, Trustee Duran?
I want to make a motion.
Go for it.
Okay. I would like to move that we approve resolution number 2019-2009 that reads, Resolution of the Board of Education of the Albany Unified School District calling an election, establishing specifications of the election order, and requesting consolidation with the statewide primary election occurring on March 3rd, 2020, with the addition of change of word. Do we need to specify the page number? The word instead of providing, it would be
No,
or
wait till you can see it.
Okay.
Julie, can you move us down, please?
with the exception of changing the word approving for approved on page 1 of the resolution, in the second to the last paragraph. So that it would read, the voters of Albany have consistently supported the district's excellent education program and approved parcel taxes, etc.
Thank you for that motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. May we have a roll call, and we're using a new, I'd like to go ahead and use a new system of rotation for the first board member to vote. Give me just one moment here.
That's Brian. No, that's me.
It's you, Jake.
Yeah.
So may we have a roll call, starting with Trustee Clark, please?
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Vice President Doss,
Yes.
President Tutain,
Aye.
Trustee Duran,
Yes?
Trustee Hinckley.
Yes.
Thank you.
The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Board.
So everybody else said yes, and you said aye.
It's okay.
Either
Yes
one.
or aye.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
We should rotate what we say.
All right.
See?
See?
Okay.
Como no?
There we go. That's it. That's a very big item for the school district, and I know we all take this very seriously. That from this point forward, the board cannot be involved, and I know that we all understand that. Yeah.
Well, just to clarify, individual board members as residents of Albany are free to do what they want in their own time, but no district resources can be used in support of the measure. So it's not just the board, but district staff who are on work time, district copiers, et cetera, cannot be used to support the measure.
Thank you, Trustee Hinckley, for that clarification. And as individuals, we can do what we want. It's the district resources that cannot be used, or when we're on district time. Okay. And that brings us to item 11-2, listed in the agenda as Director of Maintenance and Operations. This item is the superintendent's, I believe.
This item is our item. Last board meeting, testing 1, 2. Can you hear me out there? Good. Last board meeting, we had an opportunity to discuss and review the possibility of having a director of maintenance and operation. The board had the opportunity to hear from a number of experts for why it is we need to maintain our facilities on a regular basis. And what was really moving about the testimonies is that all the experts were from right in our community here in Albany. And so the board wanted to know their options, and as it stands today, we have 3 options. as spelled out in a previously approved years ago in terms of status of what we can do. We have the option of accepting the superintendent recommendation for the position of director of facilities, or a manager of maintenance and operation, which is a range 5, or at the lowest range, supervisor of maintenance and operation. We don't have it on the big screen, do we? And so the board tonight is going to give superintendent direction to either one, move forward with the director level position of maintenance and operation, range 6, or 2, move forward with manager of maintenance and facilities, range 5, and you get to see the salary schedule there, or the lowest range 4. My only concern, primary concern, as noted last board meeting and noted this one as well, in order for us to go out and recruit the best and the brightest for our facilities, was the reason why I recommended the highest level. My biggest concern would be the lowest level, where we wouldn't be able to be competitive. So at that, I think without any further ado or questions, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
I think that we'll ask for board comment and questions first, and then we'll open it up to the community. Oh.
I think Ms. Kim is going to present some information.
Sure. So at the last board meeting, staff were asked to report on where the funding for the new position would come from and what savings we have had from the not filling other positions. So here is the summary of what happened for 18-19. So as you can see on the top of this page for 18-19, there were about 6 positions that we plan to reduce. Okay, so go up more further. Maybe I can do this. Let me see. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here is the position that was eliminated and approved by the board. And this is what it happened in 18-19 school year. For 19-20, it was the total of $1,046,000. And here is information for 19-20. Okay, if you can see this. So I can go over this one. So these are the new additions we have added or restored or plan to add. So first of all, we have the Ocean View Annex Vice Principal, and we have AMS Mental Health Specialist, and we also have now Network Administrator, and Library Tech is back. However, this is paid by school care, that is a zero cost for the district. And these blue items are what we plan to add. One of the items is Director of Facilities or Director of Maintenance Operations. So you can see the cost of $43,000. The reason is I used this number here, the mid-range of the Director of Facilities of $124,000, and 60% is for the general fund. The 40% is bond fund. So take 60% of $124K, and then this is 1920 number. That means we are going to have this person for this from December to June, which is about 7 months. So this is 7 months salary of the 60%. And also, again, this is restricted general fund money. However, I just added on there just to be clear. And this is Education and Student Services Secretary for our Director of Student Services and Special Ed and Assistant Sup of Education. Let's see. The next one is the communication consultant, who is independent contractor. This is not a position. This is more of the consulting contract fees of $24,000. So you can see the total of $439,530. And here is the reduced or unfilled vacancies or the positions. So we have IT director. This position is not to be filled. And we have a HR tech. This one is our current personal coordinator's old position. And now the person's gonna start maybe in 2 weeks. So this is the money from July or whenever she moved to up to today's date, November 1st. And also this is replacing for a Cornell principal, meaning the Cornell principal stepping out had a higher step, and now the new principal has a lower step in the salary schedule. Same thing with the replacing OV vice principal. So the going out vice principal has a higher salary steps than the coming VP. This is unfilled paraeducators. This is unfortunate, but there's some savings for the district. Unfilled MNO staff as well. There's a 2 FTE currently not filled. It's more of the crews, not the facility supervisors. And this is a special ed teachers. This is also unfortunate, but this is savings for the district. So we have a total savings of 312,000. So this is all for November 1st, meaning all these positions, unfilled paraeducators, unfilled MNO staff, we plan to fill. However, it just didn't happen yet. So those are the savings from July 1st up to October 31st. Okay, so here is about 312,000, and the difference is 126,600. So now we want to look at our reserve, where we are. And this is only salaries because we thought this is easier to just look at the salaries rather than the statutory benefits or other health costs included, and it's going to be a little confusing for the public. However, when I calculate this reserve, I add all of them in because that's the real cost for the district. Okay, so here, this is when we adopt the budget in June 2019. So we are here, this is a little small, we are here 1920 and next 2 years. So we were 3.5%. And this is a fund balance reserve percentage as of unaudited actuals, because we had additional money from the variances budget versus actual numbers. So our fund balance was up by a little percentage here. It was about 5.3%. And now with all these positions added or planned to be added and reduced, we are now at this percentages here. So 10.7 is pretty similar to what it was adopted in June. So here is where we are. And let's see. So here is the third year, 3.7. So this is the finance resource, the fund resource. And these are the three ranges. And any questions? I hope this really makes sense and clear.
Yeah, I had a question for Frank. If you look on the right side to reduce unfulfilled positions, if you go down to the fifth one, unfilled paraeducators, didn't you just state a while ago that that's a crisis that we're dealing with now? So maybe we can use some of that money to increase their pay to make it more likely that we can get people to fill those positions.
Trustee Clark, because it's a negotiated item and we're in negotiations now regarding that specific item, I can just say I hear you loud and clear.
While the other trustees get their questions ready, I just wanted to ask on the new restored and planned positions. The communication consultant is listed as 24. Is that an absolute number, or is that a maximum possible?
That number is not to exceed maximum possible.
Thank you. That's all for now. Other?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Or did you guys have a question?
You should go.
Okay. For the position, I see there's like different, where there's like the director, manager. For the lower level positions is, I know for the director position, construction experience is required and it's listed within the job description. Is that also within the other descriptions, or is that kind of specific for the director of maintenance? Because I think that would kind of have an effect on people's decision, where it's like if the director makes more because they have to have construction experience versus the other ones, maybe they don't require it, so that's why they pay less.
Well, in part, and keep in mind, when we had the position of supervisor of maintenance and operation, the only position that they were supervising that was under construction was the aquatic center. Whereas now we have a bigger budget, 95 million, plus multiple sites that need to be supervised by the new person coming in.
I believe that was the director before the supervisor position, the aquatic center construction. What I checked with HR is legally board can approve any of the ranges with the same job description. So we can go with any of those ranges with the same job description that we have revised. It's more like, can we really get a person with the experience what we want to have, what we would like to see with all the job description? So that is really the question. But legally, yes, we can have the exact job description and pick any of those.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question about continuity and how these positions were included in future year budgets. So, of course, under the new restored and planned positions, of course, we're going to keep our network administrator. The director of maintenance and operations goes on, but how did you calculate the mental health specialist and the communications consultant? If you can go through and say whether you continued or whether in future years or whether you ended certain positions, that might be helpful.
Sure. So all of these positions are ongoing positions that when I plug the numbers in, because we don't have a plan yet for elimination at this point. So I do want to do a conservative budget approach. So that means all of these positions, new and planned positions, are ongoing positions that in my budget to prepare this table for the fund balance. So it's very conservative approach.
You mentioned that we would be able to advertise it pretty broadly in terms of the ranges to see who we get. But don't you need direction from the board in terms of there's I would say there's a great difference between range 4 and range 6, and defining what we need or want in the district is really important. And if you find somebody at range 4, they may not have the skills that we really want. So is the board going to say, we want somebody of this caliber, and you turn around and when you're out there looking for people, that caliber is going to be at the top range, as opposed to, is the description going to be sort of so that we don't really look, if we come across somebody at the $80,000 range, but doesn't have description C, description F, and G, we'd still hire them? See, I'm not clear as to me, that's concerning, and it seems that the board needs to really pretty much define what is it that we would like from this position in terms of what we believe the district needs.
Would it be helpful if we show you the job description and maybe go over a few items?
Well, I think
Or-
what you're asking is, you need us to choose tonight what level you want this posted at.
Correct.
Right? They can't list it for the whole range. We have to,
So it is a definite, we're defining it.
right.
Trustee Clark.
So, Ms. Kim, is the difference between A and F their years of service when they come on?
Right. Yes, I think that's what HR plays the positions based on the experience.
So A would be somebody with very little experience, and F would be somebody with the highest
Right.
amount that we'd accept.
Right.
Thank you.
Is the board ready to hear public comment on this item? Yeah. Members of the public, would you like to approach the microphone and speak?
Don't race each other.
Hi, Karen DeHart, co-president of ATA. I guess my initial reaction, and it's not a new one, is a bit unsettling as I look out on there and we have these unfortunate reductions for positions that really address students in the classroom, but we've built in, even if it's conservatively, other positions. I would argue that we need to look very carefully about what we're prioritizing here. All are, in an ideal world, important and valuable, and we'd love to get the best of everything. But then again, if we're going to find ourselves in the same situation we were like last year and the years before, and we're going to end up cutting, where are we going to end up cutting? We're all supposed to be advocates for the services that come closest to the students. So I would ask you to consider the optics to a community when you're selling a parcel tax and indicating that the first to go are the people that are closest to the students. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
My name's Diana Hayton. I talked at the meeting two weeks ago also about this same issue. I'm with the Integrated and Sustainable Design Committee that has been involved with the district for about 5 years on advising on the new school construction projects. And we talked last time about how many systems there are in these new buildings, the very latest technologies that are going to help us operate the buildings at lower cost. Hopefully, future savings down the road for the district to put the money where it really needs to be, closest to the students in the education. But it's been kind of amazing that we've gotten through 3 years without anyone leading the facilities department. When we first started the projects, we had the manager who weighed in on the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, what we were going to do. So anyway, this was, I can't really comment on the salary. I think that really, it's all up to you. The numbers are all up to you. But what we do need to talk about is that the consultants that have been hired by the district to date have been paid at very high rates. When you hire a consultant, you pay 3 times the salary. It's a markup of at least 3 times. So what we want to do is get more value for those services. If we're going to run construction projects, we're going to maintain buildings, we're going to come up with an operations and maintenance plan, let's pay a regular salary to that person in lieu of paying consultant rates. I think it is very important, like Trustee Duran said, to identify how much of the construction projects are going to be managed by this position, because that's a substantial amount of work that we have right now, and I'm not clear on that. If you want this person to manage the construction, I do think they probably need to be at that highest rate. So I think that's all I can think of.
Thank you. All right. Other questions from trustees?
There's nobody else from the community that wants to speak first?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think it's really important that it's clear, that it's made clear that I think for this board, if I can speak for the board, the students do come first. And I think last year was very painful for everybody when we had to make these cuts. And no, we never want to make cuts. But if we really analyze what happened, ultimately last year, the cuts, they were a little bit of distance away from the classroom, and ultimately those positions were brought back. The only two that were not brought back. The Albany High School assistant principal position was gone, but and Mr. McNally is here, and he'd probably get mad for me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is he provides now. He's still principal of McGregor, but he also provides assistance to the high school principal and the other assistant principal. So, and he's a long-term veteran, so I know he knows really well the high school, et cetera, and provides some assistance. Not exactly the same if you had that one position allocated for assistant principal, but there is still that. And then the other was the high school clerk. That position was eliminated. And other than that, the other positions have come back. The library techs positions came back, and once again, we want to jump up and down for school care because they are the ones that are paying for it. Other than that, the positions have been taken care of. So in essence, for 80% of the positions have returned in one form or another. And then the new positions, you have a mental health specialist that's been added now at AMS, which is vital. And then the rest are, if you look at what's being added besides a maintenance person, there is a secretary, and that, I think the idea there was that what was cut was special education and support services were combined in one position, a director position. And this is now an attempt to address some of the issues that are starting to pile up, primarily for school sites, when the special ed / support services director now has multiple things to do, and yet special ed is so important that, and I'm speaking generally because I don't work in that office or know, but my understanding is that the efforts have been focused on addressing special ed issues, and that's why the student services parts gets pushed back a little bit, and that's unfortunate. And so the idea was that a secretary would be working to assist so that special ed can get all the attention that's needed, or to the point possible, and at the same time the director would be able to address the issues that come out of the school sites in terms of student services. So I mean, I'm just trying to justify and say that while there were cuts made last year, to the best of our ability, we are trying to address all the needs that have popped up, obviously, from those cuts and what we see today, and trying to make the best effort in trying to put everything in its place.
Can I ask a couple of clarifying questions? So for this position, there's a percentage of it being paid through the budget, and then another percentage of it being paid through bond funds, correct?
Yes.
For the reduced and unfilled positions, can any of those positions can bond funds affect any of those positions? I hope I'm asking that question correctly, because I just want to make sure that I understand, because listening to the community members speak, I mean, it makes sense where it's like, hey, you're posting this position, it's a high-paying position, but there's so many other important positions there on the right when we're talking about that are directly affecting students. But if a percentage of this position is being paid for by the bond and we can't use those funds to fill those positions, I just want to make sure that that's made clear, if that makes sense.
Right, that is correct. Any of these positions weren't paid by the bond. And maybe perhaps this person, if I can ask him how much work he does with the bond construction related, then maybe like 5%, 10%, I'm not sure, but we can ask. Maybe there might be a possibility, because it has to be really direct work with the bond project.
Gotcha.
construction project. And I think one thing I didn't answer earlier is, so this person will be the point person to our communities with the design build teams and also with the our committee. Currently, we have a marine committee for the design build team. So this person will be the point person representing the district meetings, committees, point person for your committee as well, and also be a management making decisions on facilities.
Okay. And then I think another thing that would be helpful for me, I can't speak for the rest of the board, is there a way to get the savings that the district would get by having this position, having the 40% paid by the bond versus the way that we're currently doing it by using the outside? So like, if we can get like a workup that says this is how much we're actually going to save once we make this change, I think it'll also make our decision a little easier.
Right, it's going to be a lot that I can say because we are using the consultant for a lot of finance, facilities and bond decisions currently. So it will be a lot of cost saving. And that is actually one point the consultant even has been telling me, Jackie, once you have a director of facility, this is what the person can do for you. This is the person can do for the district. So he has been telling me many times so that I do know.
So we're paying the consultants so much money that they're suggesting we fire them and hire a director of maintenance?
I mean,
I don't think they want to be fired.
Right.
They think that they're doing things that are outside their scope, and that we should have a local person that would do all of these things that we're paying them a high hourly rate to do.
I'd like to, if possible, and you don't have to do it tonight because I'm like asking you on the fly, but I'd like to see the numbers, like so I could see the cost savings by going away from that.
Sure.
And
I can provide that to you.
as long as you come up to the mic.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I wasn't fast enough for the official time a few minutes ago, but just as a point of reference, Los Gatos is advertising the same exact position title, and it's for 103 to 129K. So it's somewhat comparable, just so you guys have some frame of reference there.
Mr. Eddy, what are they listing as their title, their position title?
Director of Maintenance and Operations.
Oh, so it's the exact same title. Okay.
Yeah, it's director. So they just recently posted it. So.
Just a clarification. Does it lift new construction? And how many?
There's not a whole lot of, I'm just looking on LinkedIn. So there's not a whole lot of detail here, but there's contact information there for the hiring manager. If you'd like me to, I can call her and ask.
Just point of reference, I know the superintendent there, and they're looking for someone to supervise the building and grounds and their custodians. We are different in the sense that we're looking for new construction, maintenance, and that big project that they don't have. So that is a difference.
Okay. Well,
so we look at essential duties when we look at the same title, just FYI.
Okay.
Let me see, I think.
Sarah's been waiting.
Yeah, you want to ask first? Sure.
Jackie, so if this position in particular is paid with 40% of the bond money, and the bond doesn't last forever, right?
Right.
So what are we suggesting after the bond runs out, the new construction is in place? What do we do with that director? And if you notice, it's not too long from now, 22, 23, we're below the reserve again. So we do have a problem in the long term. So I don't suspect that whoever becomes this director would like to be fired when that's all over. So then what happens? It gets absorbed by the general fund, and no longer does the bond take care of 40%. Is that correct?
There's a number. Oh, excuse me. First of all, I appreciate the question. Thank you very much, Mr. Hart. There's a number of things we have to do. One of which, in terms of consideration, one of which is restructure. and relook at what our priorities and what our values are and what our biggest needs are. And so we have a couple years to kind of process that, but that is a issue that we are going to have to eventually address. So thank you for that question.
And also, so currently we have this current school buildings, and now we are adding $95 million worth of new features. So that person will have to monitor the new buildings with new technologies and new features. That means it will be paid by general fund restricted in the future if we don't have the bond fund anymore. However, the person's job duty will be also maintaining the new schools with the new features. Also, for us not have the outside consultant as much as we do now, that can bring us some savings. And that is one of the points that I spoke to the consultant we currently have. So that is one big point that we have. And also, I can give an example, like, for example, we have a solar panel at Annex. We currently do not know if it is really a net zero. So that's something that we hope to have. I mean, we should really have to see what is the energy savings that we have in so many other aspects.
Trustee Hinckley, you've been waiting for a while.
I'm not going to let you go before me.
Then Trustee Duran.
So I just want to clarify, I appreciate all of the comments, including the concern about appearing to create new positions when we had to make really difficult cuts last year. We have eliminated one director position since then, which is the IT director, and have saved quite a bit of money from that, essentially downsizing that to a network administrator. I feel comfortable taking a position that we know we may not need in 4 or 5 years when we're done with all of the new construction. We have eliminated positions before. I don't feel too overly concerned about our ability, or it may not be me, to manage that 4 or 5 years out when I think we're going to be making a whole host of decisions, including whether we continue to have a second principal at Ocean View or Marin or whatever the temporary site is. So I think we know we're making decisions now based on the needs related to construction that may not exist in 4 or 5 years, and we'll have to make a different set of decisions then. I also think that it has become clear both that we will save money having a position like this. It meant there was a lot more testimony at the last meeting about the different ways that that could happen, including utility savings and efficiency and so forth, and saving the consultant fees. But one of the experiences of last week that was so challenging was getting so many emails from teachers and parents concerned about air quality inside the classroom, and not being able to have a district staff person with the capacity to make judgments for us about that quality. And we have classrooms with we all got the same emails, my windows don't close, my doors don't close, can I run the HVAC, should I not be running it? Different assessments from within the same school about whether the systems were capable of preventing outside air from coming in if the systems were running. I mean, these are related to students, these are related to teachers and the quality of health and safety that we're able to provide in the classroom. And it was fairly clear even last spring that because we had no designated person, or not somebody with the skills and capacity in charge of overseeing emergency planning, for example, that we were stretching the limits of not having somebody at a high level overseeing maintenance and operations. So can be characterized as a position that's far away from the classroom, but I think our experience last week made it pretty clear that it's not far away from the classroom. We do need somebody with the skills to make some of these judgment calls and evaluate the quality of our buildings to provide a safe environment for our students. I'm not I don't know enough about the market for facilities and operations directors to know what the appropriate level is. But I am concerned that we really need someone who is a proactive problem solver, and we could use an advocate for the district in some of those design meetings and in those negotiations. It's not the same having a consultant working on our behalf in that capacity. She was next.
You basically said it, Sarah, already, which is, I think it's important that we remember, I remember a parent sent us a note last year when we were doing some cuts and said, penny wise and pound foolish, you know, that sometimes we just look at things too narrowly. And I think the experts were here at our last meeting from this community that articulated so well so many skills that are needed for this position, and I have no clue about those, and I really appreciated the experts coming and informing the board that makes the decision. And so to me, it's important to really listen carefully to what the experts say, and just what you were saying, Sarah, which is that they all talked about how there could be savings. And I hear you that, I mean, down the road, we would definitely, I mean, and not far down the road. Like next year, we'll really seriously have to revisit it, but I think that we're gonna find out that a person in this position is gonna be able to save the district monies and certainly capitalize on the new technology and the new things that are happening at our new sites that most of us here in this room probably don't even know what they are and how they're going to function better for the kids and faculty.
Okay. Trustee Clark? Or Vice President Doss, were you next, or?
No, what I gotta say is real quick, and I wrote it down, so go ahead.
I think you were next.
Oh, all right. Well, with that being said, and this is just an average, so don't quote me on these numbers, but according to the average of what consultants make, based on the average of what the Director of Maintenance and Operations makes in our area, if we were to go through with this and no longer use the consultants, it looks like it would save the district an average of $34,000. If you add it up to if you're just using an average of how much they make over a 12-month span. Now, I'm assuming that number could vary, but that's just what I got from moving these numbers around here. Also, the average pay for the Director of Maintenance, including having experience in construction, is $103 to $131K, which is on par with range 5. So I just thought that information might help as we go through and try and make a decision.
Trustee Clark?
Yeah, I know a lot of the folks over here are new, but I just wanted to double check and see if anybody knows. I got an email saying that the position before was facilities supervisor. So that before we eliminated the position, it was the facilities supervisor.
That is correct. In 2017 November, we eliminated a supervisor position. That person did not oversee constructions because we didn't have a construction. The person before him was a director and oversaw the aquatics and the construction.
All right, thank you. And also, it's been stated a couple times that we have $95 million in construction to be done, but that's not including that the annex is already done and the high school addition is almost done. So we do have 2 other schools to do. But when we throw out that they're going to be overseeing $95 of construction, it's not accurate.
Right. We just have a lot of long punch list for the annex project.
It's still not. It's being presented as if we have done nothing and we have $95 worth of construction projects.
Got it. Yes.
Okay.
Total. Mm-hmm.
And then also in previous discussions, we were told that we needed to hold on to every single dollar from the bonds because we don't have enough money. And it just seems like whenever we want to spend the money, meaning staff wants to spend the money, somehow it's okay. But before, we've had some serious discussions, and it was told that we're running out of money. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
I would just add that the monies that we're paying DCA architects, our consultants, is bond money. So if we were to save dollars by filling this position, it would be that would be money that would be retained in the bond fund. So some portion, since this position is split between the bond and the general fund, but it would be saving bond dollars.
That is
Yes.
correct. It will save both bond dollars and also the general fund money. Both.
I think we need to sort of come to an action on this. I know this is difficult because even though we did lose the IT director and we're not bringing that position back, and bringing on, even though it's a one-for-one, bringing on another director is a serious thing for a board that's been through all of the cut trauma that we have been through. And I heard Trustee Hinckley's point that in a, 4 years out, 4 or 5 years out, when we're through with construction, we would probably also be reconsidering our elementary vice principal position. That would free up some funds to continue our maintenance lead. But this is a difficult decision because we're trying to save money. We're trying to not be penny wise and pound foolish. We're trying to position the district in so that we will get the most possible savings. And exactly how to do that is not perfectly clear. Our schools were dirty last year. We have been running kind of blind in terms of a lot of maintenance issues, and that has certainly shown up in the day-to-day operations. I feel for our principals last week who are having to make decisions themselves without input from experts about, was it better to run the system and hope that the smoke would clear, or was it better just to not run the system and let people sit in hot and smoky rooms? And without someone on board, those decisions and decisions like that will have to continue to be made by people who really aren't in that field. So I ask the board, is someone ready to make a proposal?
I'll throw one out and see where it lands with everyone. I would move to have a director of maintenance and operations, which is basically range 6.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I thought I said it was a motion. Yeah, I move that we, and see if there's anybody that agrees with that.
I'll second.
I'm going to ask for a roll call, and we will start with Vice President Doss.
Vice President Doss?
Yes.
President Tutane?
I'm going to vote no.
Trustee Duran?
C. Yes.
Trustee Hinckley?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
The motion passes 3-2.
Can I make a clarification? Just
Yes.
when you repeated what I said before, I wasn't saying that we could use the savings from the Ocean View Vice Principal to continue the Director of Maintenance and Operations, but
Oh.
rather to say that we could revisit all of the positions tied to the construction.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah. And I hate to vote no and not have the board in unanimity. I would, if I would have been making the motion, I would have called it a range 5, and I would have supported that. But I do definitely support the idea of having a professional maintenance and operations person on board. I do believe that that will save the district quite a bit of money, and I think that our students and staff will see a real difference going forward in their environment, and hopefully a more healthy environment that they will be able to learn more effectively in. Would any other trustee like to speak?
Yeah, I have no problem voting no, and if it was my motion, I would have gone with range 4. That's what it was before, and I'm glad that we do have somebody here. This is what the board approved, and I'll support it after the fact, but I don't have a problem voting no on it.
Okay. Thank you. You have the board's direction.
Yes,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Board's vote. And that brings us to review and action, item 11-3, independent contract services agreement between Albany Unified School District and Tamara Keller.
Madam Chair, last week we spoke under the item of review and discussion mainly about the rationale for having a point person who can assist us with some ongoing regular communication with our community, keeping them informed about a number of key issues. There was questions around clarification, and so staff went back and entertained those questions and responded to them. And so we're still in need of such a position. It is one of our central goals. It's one of our 3 goals in the LCAP communication behind whole child and student achievement. And we all know how critical communication is for us. I won't rehash that piece, but we're still asking for the board support and moving forward with this consultant position not to exceed $24,000.
Thank you. Sibyo Kim, just wanted to double check with you. Anything that you would like to share about this item before it goes to board questions?
No, this item is also, the budget-wise, it was included in the previous slide.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
If we don't approve this, can you clarify what our alternative is for providing minutes for the meetings for which our executive assistant will not be here?
It's something we would have to figure out. We had discussion as recent as contingency plan B, C, and D. At this point, we don't know, but we're working hard to know.
And
so
do you know how many meetings that is approximately?
Maybe 2, maybe 4 or 5.
I thought it was very helpful in the agenda packet to have the different projects laid out. Board, we've heard different points of view about this position, and I think that it's within our purview to okay all of this contract. The maximum amount is $24,000, or we could approve a lower limit if we so desired.
I had really appreciated getting this kind of description, this broad description, so that I'd have a better idea. And then I started picking at it, saying, do we really need so many hours for example, the media platform, et cetera, to develop that? So I started, trying to cut that way. And so I guess I'm wondering if, as you said, President Trutain, whether we could just do either partial based on obvious needs now, or whether we want to just do the whole thing and realize that the maximum would be 24 and it could be less.
Yes. Other board comments or questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that we received quite a few emails, and just wanted to check with the board or remind them that we did get an email from one of our school sites suggesting that we don't fill this position, and I just want to make sure if other people got that email as well.
And I don't know if we can openly talk about the email if it's considered private communication or whatever?
I think as long as we don't
No.
mention who it's from, it should be fine.
Okay.
Even if we do, it's public information, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's sort of juxtaposed on one hand, paraprofessionals with this communication person. And I did ask the superintendent because I wanted to clarify before I responded to the person exactly what this meant, because in fact, there should not be that. There should be monies for the paraprofessionals, and the concern that was raised at the school site was we don't have them right now in our classrooms. And the point is that the superintendent clarified is that the reason we don't have them is because we can't find the people. It wasn't a question of not wanting to provide that support in special ed. It was the fact that right now, HR has not been able to come up with para-educators to hire, but that we in fact are ready to do that. So it was not a question of one sacrificing being made, you know, at the expense of, or just to have a communication person for the district. So that's how I interpreted that email.
Yeah, that's a fair interpretation, but they were saying instead of using the money for this position, if we were to offer people more money, we wouldn't have a hard time filling the positions. And it's been a discussion that's been going on for years, and we've had many people come up at different board meetings and speak about it. When you're not paying a competitive wage, it's not a mystery why you can't fill the position.
But also, didn't we have the discussion that all has to go through the union? That's not something that we as a board can unilaterally say, we are now going to advertise the position at this rate because we want to offer more?
We were talking about the $15 minimum wage that I proposed a while back. Yes, that has to go through them. But if we were just to say we're going to give that unit a raise, I'm sure they would say yes. So I don't know. I thought that you could just give people raises, but I found out with the $15, you couldn't because other people weren't getting it.
We're
You know,
coming very close to bargaining in public here.
So do we have Trustee Hinckley, Vice President Doss, do you have any questions or comments about this description of the work or about the contract in general?
I think the description of the work was really clear. I think that if we're talking specifically about this community member and the work that she's done in the past, she has shown very clearly that if given this position, she would do it very well. One of the things that a lot of community members have talked about and emailed about is communication and transparency, and this community member has proven time and time again that they are able to communicate with other members of the community and do it clearly and do it in a way where people understand what's happening. And so that communication piece is there so that the public knows what it is that we're doing. Everybody can't make it to these meetings. Everybody doesn't have time to watch online, but they might, receive emails and other communications so that they can be in the know as the things that we have going on. So I think it's important to have somebody that is sharing that information with everybody. In the grand scheme of things, every dollar counts, but when we're talking about communication, which is very important, that does directly affect kids. Parents receive the information and then they make decisions about their children and what it is they're going to do and things like that. So I think it's important to have somebody in place to do that at all times. If somebody's going to be out, we should have somebody else in place to do that. But I am only one board member, so I'm excited to see what other people think, and we'll go from there.
Nope. Go ahead.
So I have a couple comments. One is that part of the job description of the Director of Maintenance and Operations is to provide regular updates on construction projects. So part of my decision of funding that position was to take some of these off the menu of a communications consultant. And I think a Director of Maintenance and Operations is better situated to make those kinds of updates. The other comment I want to make is perhaps less important, which is just that I think the emphasis on newsletters as a form of communication to me is not as helpful as having an updated website so that people can find accurate information, including about construction. I'm not personally eager to invest money in the creation of sort of 3 newsletters or 2, because I don't think that's a very effective way to communicate with people, or not as effective as having clear information available. And I think the spending so much time creating social media presence, it's a great way to communicate if you have an existing communications infrastructure. I don't think it's a useful investment for our resources. The one thing I would support funding is replacing the function of creating minutes for the meetings, since we're obviously legally required to produce those and they're important for the community. But I can't support this in addition to the maintenance and operations position.
Trustee Clark?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. If this does go through, I spoke to Frank about this a little bit, but people who volunteer their time to do board minute summaries are a little bit more free to use their opinion about what was going down at the meeting. If it is an employee of the district, I'm sure that there is some kind of guidelines that when you were doing minutes or you were doing summaries, it's factually about what happened, not about what you perceived happened at the meeting.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
I want to add a little bit. One of the reasons that I think it's listed as newsletter is because every taxpayer in Albany pays for the bonds. You know, there are no senior exemptions allowed for the bonds, so every household is paying. And we have no way to communicate with our entire community except by mailing out a newsletter to all addresses. Now, certainly all of that information could be mirrored on the website if somebody cares to go onto the website and search up and see where we're covering facilities. But I think I think it behooves the district to inform everyone who's paying the bonds on what we're doing with their money. So I do support the newsletter format, but also I also support, you know, having absolutely all of that also on the website. I want to. Okay, let's go to Trustee Duran, and then maybe we can finish this item.
Just 2 comments. One, I wanted to basically support exactly what you're saying. The newsletters, one is budget, the other is construction, and then the third is a summary at the end of the year about these. And all taxpayers in Albany support and pay into the schools. And so this information is vital for not just the school community, but also for the wider community. So I think it's vital that get out in that format to all the community members.
I think I'm ready to. Presidents can make motions. Generally, we ask for motions, but I wanted to throw this one out here. I would feel comfortable making a motion that we approve this contract to the limit of $6,000, and then we'll see how it goes. That gives us a chance to get our meeting minutes covered, and to get something, you know, and to get the most essential information out, you know. And then if we want to, if the district wants to bring another contract to the board later in the spring and saying, you know, you've seen what we've done with this, if we want to get some more money approved, then the board has a chance to look at it again and make another decision. So I move that we approve this contract with a limit of $6,000. Yes.
I agree with the part about the minutes because that's required. It was stated that construction, the taxpayers need to know what's going on. Well, we just hired a position where it's the director of maintenance and operations when it was heavily talked about the construction, so I think they can do that. And the budget, we have a CBO who can get that information out to the public. So I don't know if that $6,000 just covers the minutes, but that's all I think that I'm willing to support. I'm not trying to change your motion. I'm just trying to state where I'm coming from.
The motion, yeah, the motion stays on the floor. I would say that because I was a manager of communications at a biotech firm years ago before I had my kids, I can tell you that even though the director of maintenance and operations might know a great deal about his or her field, and even though the CBO knows a great deal about finances, neither one of them, I think, would be able to put together concise, clear sentences that your neighbor would be able to understand. I think that's where the magic of someone like Tamara comes in, who can simplify things and put them in layperson terms, and also be able to there's a lot involved, and so I think that I leave my motion out there and see if I can get a second.
I wanted to comment that you said $6,000, and I'd like to know specifically what you would be looking at to do with $6,000, because I did try to nickel and dime this position in terms of really seeing what we could reduce. But I'd like to know from you exactly how far would the $6,000 go?
Well, I think that really that's the district's decision, because we would just be approving the contract to that amount, and so they would make that decision. I would bet that they would prioritize taking the minutes for the meeting while our executive assistant is on leave, and I would assume that they would also prioritize the financial situation of the district, getting something out there, whether it was a newsletter that's mailed out or whether it's updates through the web or other channels, and also probably the temporary housing communications, and also and the construction update, which I do think actually needs to be a printed newsletter mailed out to all houses.
I think, can I say something really quick in regards to that? Through all the fun training that we've been doing as board members, I learned something that I keep repeating in my head that really helps me as we try and figure things out, which is it's the board's job to determine the when and the what, but the how lies in with the district and the staff. So we approve the amount and what we want to see, what we want to see done, and when we want to see it done, and how they get it done and distribute the funds, I think is a little bit kind of jumps into the micromanaging part of things. So I think we should be careful with that and let Dr. Wells and his expertise handle that part. I do want to say something really quick. We always talk about the communications when we're talking about community members, and I really want to make sure that when we're talking about the community, we're talking about the community as a whole, and that we're not separating the community based on renters and owners, taxpayers and no taxpayers, because if you rent in Albany or if you own in Albany, everybody's paying their taxes. There's nobody that owns a place in Albany that just says, I'm going to pay the taxes for you because I'm so nice. They just raise the rent. So renters are paying their fair share, as well as the people own in Albany. So I don't really like when we make that distinction, because we don't make that distinction in anything else, and that's not really what we're trying to promote as a community. We're trying to promote everybody is together and we're all here towards the same goal, which is educating our students. So I really would like for us to be mindful as we continue on and not separating the two, because when those two students are sitting in class, they're just sitting in class and they're not separated. So that's all I want to say about that.
The motion remains on the floor. If I can't get a second.
Oh, sorry. Second.
Oh, thank you. And that brings us to a roll call vote then. And this time, it moves to me as being the first to vote.
President Trutain?
Aye.
Trustee Duran?
No.
Trustee Hinckley?
No, but I want, okay, no.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Vice President Doss?
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails.
Can I make another motion?
Yes.
So by my estimate, the cost of, I just want to say, first of all, if I ever to communicate anything, I would definitely, and I had money, I would definitely hire Tamara. She knows that. I would love to be able to fund something like this. Sounds beautiful. By my estimate, give or take, the number of board meetings for which we would need a substitute minute reporter, we'd need somewhere between $2,000 and $2,400. So I would move to approve a contract with Tamara Keller to provide communication support for the district with a maximum limit of $4,000. And the stipulation that that includes meeting minutes for the duration of our need.
I'll second. On this roll call, we'll start with Sarah. Clementina. Yeah, sorry. I'm going by this. I'm going by this chart, but yeah, it should be Clementina.
Trustee Duran?
No.
Trustee Hinckley?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Vice President Doss?
Yes.
President Trutain?
Yes. So the motion passes for a contract with a limit of $4,000 and the stipulation that the Board of Education meeting minutes will be included in that scope of work. Thank you. And that brings us to our review and discussion. We're running a bit behind schedule. We've got a lot of interesting and important items tonight. Our first review and action is physical education enrollment policies and placements. I hand this over to the superintendent.
Yes, I'm going to defer to our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. It's over in that department.
Excuse me, good evening. Superintendent Wells, Board President Trutain, board members and community. I am going to defer to Darren McNally, who's the assistant principal at Albany High School and the principal of McGregor High School. We are very fortunate that Darren is very well studied in this area as a result of his participation last year on the Budget Advisory Committee. And so he has prepared some information for us this evening. And so thank you very much, Mr. McNally, for being here.
Thank you. So used to the podium. I'll go ahead and just review. I sent all the board members, of course, all the pack with information. I realize it's very dense, and I have no intention of just reading through the entire thing over again for you. So I just would like to highlight a couple key points for you again and for also the members of the public. Ms. Williams, I know, sent me some questions today. I don't know if those were, we were on a time crunch. I know those got to the board. I do have a little bit of additional information that I was only able to put together a couple hours ago in response to one question, but I'll go over that. So let's just look at that current placement chart that's on there, and I'll go over some details. So California State Education Code and AUSD board policy requires 2 years or 20 credits of PE to graduate from high school. There are a variety of different ways students can be exempted from that requirement. Just for the sake of language, I'm going to use exemption and waiver interchangeably. Education code uses just the word exemption, but the two are used interchangeably in many different places. The other aspect of it is there's multiple ways students can meet those requirements for credits. Later, I'll get into some of the nuance around PE requirements that are unique to PE. This is the current placement of our 9th and 10th grade students. That 2-year requirement generally translates to a 9th grade and 10th grade requirement. When we say PE class here, that translates to a course that is essentially considered a physical education course. PE 1 is for freshmen, PE 2 is for sophomores. There are also some special education related courses, that's PE Lab and Adapted PE. We do have students who are medically exempt. So just for clarification, those are not students who are receiving credit for PE. Those are students who are exempted from participating in PE and then subsequently from the PE credit requirement for graduation. But they still have to meet the same number of credits for graduation as any other student. And then in 10th grade, again, PE class, so the interscholastic sports waiver is for students who plan to participate or are currently participating in a school sport. We essentially waive or exempt a student from 2.5 credits for each season of a sport, so that 4 seasons equates to a year of PE. That is not an education code requirement. That is our math. That's a district requirement. We also consider Dance 2 and Advanced Dance 2 to be PE courses to meet the PE 2 requirement. So that meets the same requirement. One typo, there should be 3 stars next to that 17. That course, we have 2 different sections that are a lot bigger. That was my mistake. We do also have students who are qualifying, who are getting their PE credit through independent study. In independent study, attendance requirements are considered met through work completion. And I'll talk about independent study a little bit more in a minute. And then we also, of course, have students who are medically exempt at the sophomore level as well.
Yeah, just a real quick question before you move on. So the interscholastic sports waiver, if somebody does like baseball, football, does each one count?
Each season counts as 2.5 credits. Yeah.
So if you do 2 seasons in a school year,
that would count as a semester.
Thank you.
Yes. Not including freshman year. So that is only, so you're only eligible for an interscholastic sports waiver if you're in 10th grade or higher. I'll go into a little bit why that is. There was a question from the board about which sports are involved. From the data that I have, every single student plays at least 2 sports. And cross country, swimming, and track and field together make up more than half of the sports that students are in. And then there's also a small number of students in baseball, basketball, golf, soccer, softball, tennis, volleyball, water polo, and wrestling. Those numbers will probably shift a little bit in the spring semester when more students who are trying to waive basically 2 seasons or 5 credits will then apply for waivers as well. But that gives you a sense of kind of what sports are included. Okay, let's go on to the next section about education code requirements. This is just this is an ugly, ugly mess, the education code requirements around PE. There is one thing I do want to make very clear. PE is the only class that has an attendance requirement written into education code. This is really unique to PE. And the example I gave here, I do want to clarify because there's a question around that. AUSD requires 4 years of English to graduate from high school. So that would naturally translate to taking English every single year of high school. However, there's no education code requirement that every single year you be in an English class. So there could be some sort of extenuating circumstance where maybe a student can't one semester take an English class. They can still meet their graduation requirements or do it in summer school or something like that, but there's no specific requirement they be in an English class every single year of school. PE is different. PE actually has legal requirements that every student be in PE. And actually, Ed Code does say technically, and that's actually 51222, there's not a 2 in there, every kid is supposed to be in PE unless they say they don't want to be in PE and can qualify for an exemption. PE is the only subject that has this in there. And this is part of what creates so much of the confusion around PE requirements compared to other subjects. I tried to list here in kind of order from kind of 9th grade up the different exemptions that are available. One thing I want to make clear about these exemptions, these are all exemptions that are allowed under Ed Code. They require the board to have a policy creating that exemption. So these are just things that the board is authorized to do. These are not automatically available to any student. And these are not, almost nowhere are these just blanket done for all students. The first one, of course, is for students who are ill or injured and we are not able to create a modified program. 3 of our PE teachers are here today, and I would say that actually our PE program is probably one of the most effective at creating modified programs for students who need to have that need. I really actually want to recognize our PE teachers for being incredibly flexible. And actually, if you'll notice that in that previous slide, 99% of our freshmen are currently in a PE class. A lot of those kids have some extraordinary needs, and our PE program works incredibly well to accommodate those needs for those students. So while they may be in a class, our PE teachers who are very well versed at this can create a modified program to serve many different needs, and students can still get that physical education experience. So you could just go back to that list of exemptions again. The next one is, so for students who are in a school-sponsored interscholastic program, may be exempted. The next one, so this is where we start getting into grade requirements. Students in grade 10 or higher may be exempted if they pass the physical fitness test. We are legally required to give all students a physical fitness test at the end of 9th grade. If they pass 5 of the 6 criteria, they can be exempted. And again, can be exempted and then our policies create the exemption are 2 different things. These are the acceptable exemptions under Ed Code. And then this is, of course, where it gets fun. If you're in 11th grade or 12th grade, you're automatically exempted from PE. So while it says you're supposed to be in PE, if you don't ask for it in 11th or 12th grade, you automatically you're asking for an exemption yourself, and we, of course, honor those exemptions. Technically, we do have to have a PE course for any student who wants one. We do have a few students who move through. Every single year of high school, they want a PE course. We have a program for those students. That's another Ed Code requirement. The other thing I want to talk about, so these are exemptions. Then, of course, there's independent study and alternative ways of earning the credit. We do have a fairly limited independent study program in AUSD. PE is a part of that. To clarify one point on there, there was a question. So we provide independent study in situations where, for whatever the need of is the student, they can't access a classroom-based course, but we believe they can complete the content on their own. That's not super common. And we also have very limited staffing to support independent study. We have no dedicated independent study staff. So all independent study is done basically teacher hourly. Teachers have to be willing to volunteer to do that. There has been discussion of various different programs in surrounding districts, and so I've taken a look at these. I do want to preface everything I say with, I am not a lawyer. Okay? All right? I was a science teacher. So keep that in mind. And this is basically the best I could figure out. In a few cases, a year ago, I did call the program specialist at the California Department of Education, asked that person some questions about what's allowable, what is not allowable, to get more clarification myself. The first one is Berkeley Unified School District. So Berkeley does 2 things that are slightly different. One is they do have that interscholastic sports exemption for 9th grade. Interestingly, their board policy states they do award credit for it. I'm not 100% sure how they can do that because there's an exemption versus an awarding of credit. Those are 2 different things. The part that I think most people are familiar with Berkeley Unified is that if students participate in an outside activity, that waives their PE requirement. I can't find any statutory authority, any kind of allowance for a school board to waive 9th graders from PE if they're just participating in an outside activity. The only waiver I can identify is the one that says if they're participating in interscholastic sport. Now, if we go on to Piedmont, there's another thing in there. Just want to scroll down. So Piedmont in some ways is a little bit closer to what we do. But with Piedmont, they have an option for 10th graders that is an independent study program. So again, these students are earning credit through independent study. They are not being exempted from the graduation requirement, but they are being exempted from participation in 10th grade in PE class kind of day to day, and they're doing independent study to earn the credit. So these students are still earning the credit towards graduation. And Piedmont specifically does not make their policy available to 9th graders, probably because of the attendance requirement. One other thing I do want to identify is a slight difference, especially with the next one. Albany Unified has board policies related to independent study that do require things like a teacher of record, a teacher who is credentialed in that area and able to evaluate progress, so that would have to be considered. The next one is Irvine Unified, which was provided to me as an example of a place that provides an exemption for elite athletes, quote unquote. Their policy is interesting because they have a very specific definition of what makes someone an elite athlete. And from what I can tell from their policies, that's determined by some sort of council of principals who makes that determination. They only are willing to call someone an elite athlete if they are in an individual sport, and they actually have a very long list of how you have to be ranked to qualify as an individual athlete. They also make it available to students who participate in a traveling sport. Again, this is not a waiver. This is an independent study program that is made available to elite athletes. So these students are actually not being exempted from their PE requirement. They're meeting their PE requirement through independent study, authorized by their status as an elite athlete, quote unquote. Some other pieces I just want to kind of add is some considerations in this district. There is, I believe, an important equity aspect to this, which is if we create new exemptions, I think it's very important to consider who will be able to access those exemptions. Especially when we talk about encouraging exemptions, especially through access to outside organizations, it's important to look at what kind of access do those organizations provide to all students. And that should be a consideration in our decision making is, are we creating opportunities and equal opportunities for all students? Next one is an administrative aspect. One of the biggest changes in administration in Albany Unified in the past year has been those positions that traditionally have overseen independent study and independent study style programs, such as the coordinator of alt ed program or position and the director of student services. The next one is we do not currently have full-time dedicated independent study faculty. So we would need to essentially figure out a way to create those positions or create those opportunities or have those individuals whose job it is to oversee and manage such a program. There is some quick math there. As someone who has overseen independent study for 3 years, if you kind of break it down per kid, it's a very resource-intensive program. And we would not be able to serve the same number of students as we do, for example, with PE, which has a 40-to-1 ratio for a class, quote unquote. If we took that person out of the classroom for that one section, there's almost no way they could equally serve 40 students in an independent study capacity, let alone that we don't really have the supervisory frameworks for that kind of thing. And then the last one is we really as a district have focused on having a really robust standards-aligned PE program. Education code actually allows for a lot of wiggle room in what you call a PE class. The famous example is marching band. And that seems to be the great debate in California around PE classes, just as an example. Albany Unified, and especially our PE department here at the high school, has worked really hard to have a really broad program that's not just about being physically active, but about actually creating a joy in movement and a joy in physical activity. And if we really broaden what we're going to call physical education or the exemptions related to physical education, it's important to consider, will that still be embodied in whatever program we have? So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Principal McNally. I open it up to the board for questions and comments. Trustee Clark, your hand was first.
I'll save mine to the end. I just want to thank you for the very thorough presentation. It was very, very helpful. And I'll save mine for later on.
Vice President Doss?
That's what I was, no. What's up, what is on the fitness test, like that students take in order to
I'm going to defer to Mr. Shevelson.
Yeah, show us. Show us.
Let me know if I missed something, okay? The Fitnessgram test is made up of 6 different tests. So there's the mile run, which is a sort of a fitness test. There is the trunk lift, which is a back flexibility test. There is a sit and reach, which is a lower body flexibility test. There is the BMI index, which becomes part of it. There is a push-up test, which is an upper body strength test. And then there is a curl-up test, which is a abdominal strength test. And then the state has certain, ranges where based on your age, your gender, you need to fall within those ranges to pass. And so it's not. They have ranges. So like push-ups, I think that the female students have to do 7 and the males have to do like 11 type of a thing. And so we test them and record all that and put it on a spreadsheet that we get.
Oh, nice.
Go ahead.
Before you walk
Yeah.
away, I wanted to ask a couple questions. One is, I'm a little surprised that those are the basics from fifth grade is when you start the testing, the fitness testing? Through high school. And I'm just wondering if you guys feel that's adequate for secondary students, high school students, and 5 out of 6 is passing, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you compare to see how the 5th graders do as opposed to how high school students do? Do they get better as time goes on?
I have never seen data like that.
It would be kind of interesting, don't you think, to see if your program is really effective at improving, the students improving on
Our
their
program is
skills.
only a high school program, so it's not a district-wide program. We don't get together with the grade schools, and we do some articulation with the middle school.
Mhm. But the fact that the testing is the same, you would think that there would be more.
Well, there's definitely the data is out there.
Yeah, and I guess my second question, it was one of the concerns I had, is that, and I had just imagined this, that you have a student that really wants to do interscholastic sport, but for some reason can't pass the fitness test.
You don't have to pass the fitness test to do an interscholastic sport. You just have to try out for that sport. That's got nothing to do with the testing whatsoever.
Yeah, because if
I
you make
thought there was a thing where you had to pass at 10th grade in order to get the credit. You had to pass the fitness test, or that's part of it.
Our board policy requires that if you are going to use that interscholastic waiver, you have to have passed the physical fitness test.
Mhm.
That is in our board policy. That's not in education code. Yeah.
So ours is a little stricter then,
Yes.
so to speak.
Almost every district has a more strict program than all of the exemptions allowed under education code. Our program does require a student to have passed the physical fitness test to be eligible to use the interscholastic sports waiver.
Can I just ask you, do you think that that sort of is discriminatory in the sense that there may be kids that can't really pass that test because they don't have the flexibility, but they definitely can go out for a sport like football or basketball, something like that?
Well, the passing on the Fitnessgram requires only passing 5 of 6 areas to be considered passing. I don't know if I'd use the word discriminatory. I do think it's a question of if I'm curious how a student could not pass the Fitnessgram and yet be well qualified for a interscholastic sport. But we could potentially have the language of the board policy be slightly modified to say that any student participating in a interscholastic sport. The one thing to watch there is you could then create a situation where let's say a 9th grader doesn't pass it for some reason, spends fall on the football team. They then have to come back in the spring and join PE because they're now no longer in an interscholastic sport. So there is that it's a little confusing because our policies have combined a couple exceptions together, and if we start tweaking them, it could create some interesting scheduling problems.
Mr. Shevelson, can you give us we didn't ask for this, so maybe you can't do this off the top of your head, but about what percentage pass the 9th grade Fitnessgram?
give that list to teacher. I would say 80 plus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, better,
But I don't quote me on that, but we could get that information for you.
Okay, and I just wanted to provide an example because like you said, Principal McNally, all of the ed code and the different exceptions and the waivers and the credits and all that, it gets really complicated fast. I wanted to use my my son as an example. So he played sports in 9th grade, and he took PE. Okay, he passed the Fitnessgram test, and that made him eligible to get a PE waiver. So he went ahead and took out the waiver, although he was told at school, make sure that you participate on the teams, because if you don't actually go through and participate on the teams, then you're going to end up having to like take PE in 12th grade. So it is a responsibility for those students and for the parents to make sure that they follow through. Then he was on sports teams for the rest of his high school career, and he got those 2.5 credits that added up to the necessary credit to make up for that not having PE in 10th grade. So that's kind of what it looks like on the ground as a parent.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it.
Okay. I want to give a chance for our PE teachers to come up and be acknowledged. I think it's notable that you guys came in tonight to hear this discussion, and I want to, give you a hand, really. Can you introduce yourselves and come up? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Scott Shevelson. I'm the PE department chair, and I teach 9th grade PE 1, and I teach the upper division weight training / team sports class.
Thank you.
I'm David Janinas, and I teach 9th graders and one class of 10th graders. And this is my first year at the high school, and I've been at Marin for the last 8 years.
Thank you.
My name's Kara Baker. I teach one PE class that's a PE 2 class, and then I have the dance program. So those classes that are considered PE equivalents.
Thank you guys very much. All right, let's give them a hand, folks.
And she's not here tonight, but also Stephanie Berberian, who is our primary PE 2 teacher as well. Yes, Ernesto Rogers, who is our adapted PE and PE lab teacher as well.
Board Member Durant?
I had asked a question, and where I saw that for the current waivers for the interscholastic, there were 34 students, and independent studies, there were 6 students. And I was just wondering, that's the basically, and maybe I should not be counting the 6, but the 34, in terms of, you said there was basically 40 students in a PE course? Is that correct?
Yes, our contract, so our class size limit on PE translates to 40 students per class. It's a little bit fuzzier than that, but that's the best way to think of it. Realistically, that number has to be about 30, 38, 37, or you start running into contact limits for our PE teachers. And just to note, that is the largest contractual contract limit we have. Most teachers, it's 150.
That's right.
For them, it's 200.
And given that, though, I guess I'm trying to go towards, if more students would say be interested in the interscholastic, does that impact on PE and how many courses would be offered? And somehow my second thought was, instead of having a class, then could a PE teacher sort of serve as that independent faculty person?
That would be possible if the number of students who are either accessing waivers or independent study increases. But again, we run into that problem where, let's say 40 students now, an additional 40 students access the interscholastic sports waiver. Or actually, independent study is a better example. Let's say we suddenly have 40 new students eligible for independent study. It would be very difficult for one of these teachers to support all 40 students in independent study in the amount of time that they would have supported them in the classroom. And that's part of just the complexity of an independent study program.
I'd like to ask for community comment on this item.
Could we get some examples of how one gets an independent study for PE? And then I have some other
So independent study, by the nature of our board policies, as well as just kind of the constraints of the program, is a case-by-case basis where there has to be an understanding of the student, for whatever reason, not being able to access the classroom environment. The most common reason is students with Section 504 plans, so students with a disability, or students with an individual education plan, a special education student, who, by the nature of their need, cannot. Usually, the most common example is a student who actually the physical environment of PE is really problematic. Classic examples, I shouldn't say classic examples, common examples, and in many cases in independent study, there's no such thing as a common example because it's a small number of students. A student with body dysmorphia, with a psychological need around the way they see their own body, really can often have a lot of severe issues with kind of participating in a PE program. That is something we have seen. We've also seen something of an uptick in students with medical notes, so an authorization from a medical provider to not participate in our PE program. We generally have honored those in the past. Another common situation with PE is students who've previously failed PE 1 or PE 2, and we are trying something else. This is especially important with, or not important, this is common with, for example, a senior who does not want to be in a class with freshmen or sophomores, and that can create a real challenge for them to access the course. So we might try to put together an additional program for them. That is also a little more common with McGregor, and we have actually a few additional ways of getting PE credits through McGregor as well that resemble independent study. Those are the ones that kind of come to mind. Yeah.
So, I guess I would say from the perspective of our family, and the reason that I've come in a number of times to discuss this is about the inequity of school sport versus an outside sport, and the selection process for getting onto a school team. You mentioned that there's a possible equity issue in allowing, I would say the reverse is actually true for at least some of the school sports here, in that it is more likely that students who have had a number of advantages are likely to be known to the coach, worked with the coach before, and be chosen for the sport. So I would question the logic there. Our position is that, you know, we have nothing against PE at all. All for it. Our issue is that we are giving credit to some sports versus others, and at a time when there are fewer sports than there used to be, and it is harder to get on to teams than it used to be. You know, they used to be able to have larger rosters, and people could just more or less walk on or be bench warmers or whatever be on the team. There's not much of that anymore, at least in our district. So that's where we see the inequity, is that we're giving 2.5 credits to students participating in one sport versus another. I guess I would also just question out loud the idea that it would really take 30 minutes of administrative time per month to enact some sort of outside option, in that the coaches who are doing the approved sports are definitely not spending 30 minutes of administrative time on each athlete on their teams. They're spending obviously way more than that with the athletes, but in terms of administrative time, evaluating and writing something up, that doesn't seem accurate. And then thirdly, when we're talking about independent study and how much time that would require, and I assume potential cost there and burden to PE teachers. You know, there are ways to put the burden of that and the responsibility of that onto the student. You know, making them fill out sheets as to what activities they've done and how many hours they've done, and have that signed off on by their coaches, and, you know, writing up something, you know, in detail about what they're doing and how they're progressing. It doesn't have to be a huge burden on the PE department, nor do we want to create a huge burden. It's really for us, it's about you know, being able to give equal credit to different types of athletes, especially when many of the outside programs are putting in way more time per week than some of the school sports.
Thank you. Board, this is a review and discussion item, so there's no vote required, but if someone has a comment or if we want to consider a direction to staff, this is the time to do it.
I just have a question. So, first of all, all the credit waiver exemption language is a little confusing, but just to clarify, the interscholastic athletes are not getting credit for PE. I mean, they're not having to complete the PE credits, but they are having to complete those credits in some other way at
to
school.
phrase it another way, no student is given credit for participating in school sports.
Right.
They
So
are exempted from a PE requirement that does not affect the total number of credits they require for graduation.
So essentially, they're able to take something else, some other.
You can think of it as participating in a
class
school
or-
sport grants you more flexibility with your schedule.
Right. So I'm just trying to sort of gauge what it is that families who would like this are looking for their kids, because some of the exemptions are clearly designed to ensure that we're accommodating kids that can't participate in PE. But what we're asking is that, or what we're discussing is, what are the circumstances under which we don't require children to participate in PE just for 10th grade and instead free up that credit time for something else? Do you have a sense of how much, you know, I've only been on the board less than a year, sort of how much is this an issue? How much demand is there for this flexibility, and how do we sort of understand the context here? Not to diminish the concerns of one family.
Yeah, I think it's always a tension that we face, which is how do we, as a school, as school leaders, as a school board, ensure that we're really saying when every student walks across the stage that they've had a education that we can vouch for in all the different ways that we believe in quality education, while at the same time giving students and families the flexibility to provide the best possible education that they see as meeting their needs. And also, if a student's excited about something, how do we kindle that excitement in them? And I think that's always going to be a real serious, I think that's going to be the greatest tension that many of us face. I don't know if I would really venture a number number of students, I can't say exactly. I do know, for example, over at Berkeley, where they have, let's say, extremely broad exemptions, most students take advantage of them. But, many of those students, to be frank, simply kind of go over to the Y and sign their sign-in sheet and call that their PE class. So I'm not sure I can really kind of say this is how many students would be better served under this situation or under this circumstance.
I think you had said earlier that one of the primary things about PE is the joy of movement. Is that correct? And I could see also in that context that we want to be open to a variety. I mean, I don't think we should put ourselves in a box exactly, and that's what I guess exemptions serve in a sense, to be a little bit more flexible. And so you had mentioned as part of your write-up that that the possibility of AHS Instructional Improvement Committee could kind of work on parameters going forward for an independent study program. Is that correct? And that is still a possibility that this committee could work forward and discuss this more in depth?
Yes, IIC could possibly kind of take the lead on that. I think we do then, of course, run into those. The IIC, of course, needs to understand some of the constraints around resources and those sort of things. And one thing I would say is the PE program that these folks run is not the PE program I had in high school. It is much more nuanced and complex and interesting than, kind of the let's throw a softball at certain kids stuff that we did when I was in high school. Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make, and it's just a really brief one because we could get into a whole lot of discussion, also is around the equity issue. There's lots to say about the equity issue, but I also you can see it from a whole lot of different viewpoints. And, I somehow think if we would have, and you would be the people that would recognize a talented girl who's doing dance, but at the same time, she loves gymnastics, and yet her family can't pay. But those are the kinds of kids that you see nationally that somehow get the support from the community, from a teacher in particular. And so I don't want to box us into also using equity anytime we feel, well, not anytime we feel, but just I think we have to be careful in the use of the term in a very respectful way of what equity serves and whether in fact kids really caring and really loving something, we say, well, that's okay, but you know what? Equity doesn't allow you to push your love for this athletic endeavor a certain way. I wouldn't want to go that route. So I would caution us to be careful too when we use the term equity and what it really means. And I think we'll be having lots of discussions about that in lots of different areas for a long time.
Board Member Clark.
Yeah, real quickly, and it's completely voluntary. I was just wondering if Mr. McNally or any of the high school PE teachers have any advice or suggestions for anybody up here? Completely optional.
Oh man, I really wish I had that podium right now. I think that this is a very complex and nuanced issue, and I think that there's been really great number of points. I think also, a question and a key question for the points that raised is, we always wish we could offer as much program as possible, and we're often very constrained on the resources that we have available. And the most important resource we actually have is our teachers' time, and their good work. And so I do kind of worry a little bit about creating a program that dilutes that a little bit. I think this might be an issue for the IIC to take up and consider. I think that's probably the body which is composed of parents, students, teachers, and administrators at the high school to look at this maybe in a little bit more detail and determine if there's a need, where that need exists, and what the best way to address that need would be. That would be my unsolicited advice, I guess.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hold on. I'm going to speak.
Oh.
I feel like we just kind of agree with that. It was years ago that we took the dance too through the IIC. So we have been adding and giving a broader range of ways to get those, get your PE credits. And so we have, you know, we've taken those steps, we feel like. And so, you know, we want you to pass the Fitnessgram to show us, and as the state is asking, right, pass the Fitnessgram showing that you're a pretty fit kid. And if you can't pass that, then maybe extra PE class is maybe what's best for you, health-wise. So we feel like, you know, what we've got is a pretty good program. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Janinas.
Also, in physical education, it's the one subject that you can work on the affective, cognitive, and social, and the kinesthetic domain all at once. And no other subject gets to do that. And I see kids in the program that come from all walks of backgrounds and life and working together in a way that they don't get to do necessarily in the science classroom or the math department, but in PE, they get to share that struggle together, and it's a real community builder that I think is really valuable. So.
Go ahead, guys. We are so far behind tonight. So go ahead, Vice President Dawson. Let's try to finish this item and get on to some of our other business.
I just want to thank everybody for, you know, coming, and I appreciate that. I was told by my daughter's 5th grade class that if you were here this evening, Mr. Janice, that they really miss you. So. Oh yeah, she. Yeah. No, they can't wait. They talk about you all the time. So that's all I was gonna say.
Okay. Right, Board Member Clark.
So yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we direct this. Oh,
direct staff.
Sorry, I would like to request that we bring this back for some kind of review and discussion, or can we give direction to staff?
Yeah, I think we can. I think that the board could ask if the. Were you going to ask if the IIC could consider this? That
was a suggestion, yeah, and I think that is the proper route to go at this point. So, however, I would go about doing that properly and see if any of the other board members feel the same way.
Board, can we have sort of an informal survey? Is everyone comfortable with having the Instructional Improvement Council consider this issue?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Have they ever taken this up before or recently?
The last time would be, as Mr. Shevelson said, when there was the consideration of Dance 2 meeting
okay.
the equivalent of the PE2 requirement, which would have been 5 years ago? 5 or 6 years ago?
2013 proposed for the 23rd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, it sounds like that's a wrap. Okay, and that is noted over here. Thank you. Okay, now thank you very much, all of our PE staff and Vice Principal McNally. We appreciate your being here and trying to clarify that very complicated area for us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
And thank our community member also for coming and spending this time with us. Instructional Improvement Council, yeah.
Does somebody know the answer? I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
No,
there are
students,
parent
parents.
representatives on that committee. I would communicate with Principal Ritchie. There we go. Okay. Yes, Board Member Clark.
So yeah, as you mentioned, we're 40 minutes behind schedule, and I know we can't keep pulling stuff off because we're never going to get caught up, but it looks like there's a couple review and discussions and some review and action. Is there anything that anybody else thinks that we might be able to table?
I think we need our review and actions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Review and actions, yes, but there's a couple of review and
Right.
discussions and a staff report.
So I think we should probably move forward with our 3 review and actions, and then after that, I would leave it to the board's discretion about whether we're most interested in the staff report on the smarter, balanced, summative assessments, and whether we feel like we also have the California Healthy Kids Survey issue and our governance handbook.
I'm wondering about the California Healthy Kids Survey, in the sense that I did ask this question and got an answer that one of the reasons why it was being presented, or so that the survey could be done sooner than later, so that information could come back to the LCAP and to the school sites in order to do something with that, with the information, with the results. And so I'm wondering if that's an item that we would want to engage in tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. I know Clementine has been asking for it for a while, so when we get there, if we had the choice between 12.2 and 12.3, I'd rather table 12.3.
Okay, so let's go for, we're gonna move to review and action. And then we'll have our staff report, and then move back to California Healthy Kids Survey at the end of our meeting. Let's see if we can get that done. Okay? That brings us to 13-1, Independent Contractor Services Agreement between Albany Unified School District and Marcosa.
Thank you. This item is to approve agreement for construction services at for the elementary temporary housing at Albany High School. So this is the prep work before we place the 3 portables, so we can do the site preparation for the portables. And the amount is $105,000, and it's gonna be paid by the bond fund. And this Marcosa submitted the lowest bid, and this is going to happen pretty quickly, but this has to be scheduled with Alton Construction currently doing the construction at Albany High School. Because for this company to do the prep work, we need some access with the current construction. So it will be some scheduling work between these 2 companies.
I see. Thank you. Board comments, questions? Can I get a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this item, the Independent Contractor Services Agreement for construction services for the elementary temporary housing at Albany High School project by and between Albany Unified School District and Marcosa.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. That brings us to 13-2, Independent Contractor Service Agreement between Albany Unified School District and Bachmann and Woody Electric Company.
Okay. Thank you. This item is to review and approve an agreement for the construction services at elementary temporary housing for the temporary housing at Albany High School as well. Now, this is a 3rd step. So the first one, Marcosa contract, was a prep work before the portables. So now the portable will be delivered after the site work. And then we will have to hook up the electricities and all the pipes and everything. So these are the electrical work. And the company, Bachmann and Woody Electric Company, got the lowest bid. It is in amount of $172,000 in bond fund.
My question would be, I see the contract for the prep work and I see the contract for the hookups, but when are we going to see the contract for actually placing the temporary buildings, the portables?
So the portable is actually ready to be delivered here, because we had board approved the portable contract a few months back.
Ah.
The pictures of them.
Right.
Okay, when we did that, okay.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that's in Livermore, but we are waiting for the site prep work first, and then we can deliver the portables, and then we can do this electric work.
Great. Thank you. Questions on this contract? Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the independent contractor services agreement with Bachmann and Whitty Electric Company Incorporated.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we get to 13-3, ratification of the tentative agreement between Service Employees International Union and Albany Unified School District.
This is part of our practice that the district admitted to, and our last agreement for this year is our classified union here, who has accepted and ratified, and just needs the board approval to get the Me Too retroactive to July 1st, 2018.
Thank you, Superintendent Wells.
Clementina.
I was going to move, but maybe we need a discussion first.
Nope.
I was just, I guess I would appreciate, there are some board questions on this item. Superintendent Wells, can you clarify sort of the process, what the board did last June and what they're doing now?
I think it was June 25th when, I don't know why it happened prior to me arriving, where a piece of the contract came to you opposed to the whole contract. And what should have happened was nothing should have came to you except when the whole contract was ratified. So you got a piece of it, then you get the rest of the piece, which makes it whole. We won't be doing that again. We don't plan to do that again. It's really confusing.
Okay. Board? Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the ratification of the tentative agreement between the Service Employees International Union and Albany Unified School District.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. I'm glad that we have a contract, a full contract, a complete contract together for our Service Employees International Union folks, because we do very much value their work and their service.
And now I would recommend now that we go to 13-2. Well, actually, that's the order. Sorry. 13-2. Oh, does it 12-2? The Healthy Kids Survey.
12-2? Okay, we can certainly do that. 12-2, California Healthy Kids Survey. Assistant Superintendent Williams, would you like to?
Sure. This item is coming before you this evening because there were two requests. One, an original request, as you will recall, a couple of years ago now, around including climate questions in the California Healthy Kids Survey custom module that we administer. And then recently, there was a question around administering the survey earlier in the fall. And so both of those things cannot happen. And so I wanted to bring this item forward for your review and discussion and get some direction from you. I have provided board members with the custom module questions and have received a little feedback from a couple board members in regards to those questions. And so I just want to draw your attention to very quickly the table that shows the number of questions we are currently asking students to respond to at our different grade bands. And the course, so the course survey is not able to be modified. And so at elementary, we are asking 77 questions, at middle school 122, and then at high school 134. Custom modules are completely optional. Districts can use those or not use them. There is a limit on the number of questions that can be included in the custom module. The limit is 62, so you will see that we are right there for middle school and high school. So in the event that there was a desire to add questions, some of the questions currently being asked in the secondary custom module would have to be removed, or you could only ask one additional question, right, to get to your 62 question limit. And there is, we're not close to that in elementary, but I don't think that we want to ask elementary students 40 more questions or 30 odd more questions in any event. So just really quickly to review some considerations. There is currently a California Healthy Kids Survey module, climate module. It's got 54 questions. Our current modules, current custom module at the secondary asks the maximum allowable -1. We've administered this custom module since 2013-14, and we currently administer the California Healthy Kids Survey once every other year, and so it's been administered 3 times. And so I think we want to think about then bullet number 4, continuing to administer the same questions for at least some period of time in order to determine if we're making growth in the areas that we desire to see growth relative to those custom module questions.
Thank you very much. I have just a couple of quick questions. If the board were to give you the go-ahead to administer this early, what then would you do, and how early would this be administered?
So we actually, at the beginning of the year, set up these surveys to be administered as they currently exist. And so I would say between now maybe and our winter break, we would work with principals to see if it was feasible at this point now to be able to administer the California Healthy Kids Survey. In the event that it wasn't feasible, sort of given the breakup of time and vacations and sort of getting close to the break, we would be in place to administer the survey almost immediately upon our return in January. So the other piece I think that's important to remember is at our last board meeting, we talked a little bit about the local indicators, and the results from checks is one of our local indicators. And we are going to be required moving forward to report the results of our local indicators when our LCAP is approved in June. And so we would want to move with some deliberate speed to administer the survey, get the results back, have an opportunity for our LCAP advisory committee to digest those results, find some way to incorporate them into the development of the LCAP as appropriate, and then be able to bring that information back when we are presenting the LCAP in June. This is a new requirement around local indicators, so before there was no connection necessarily in time between our local indicators and our LCAP, and now there definitely is a need for there to be some synchronicity.
Questions from the board?
I know that I had raised the idea about adding a couple questions or subbing out, whatever, depending on working with the administrators on that. But certainly at this time, I feel that we should go full speed ahead and maybe consider next year re-looking at and seeing if at that time there's any strong feeling at the school sites that maybe we could tweak a couple of the questions.
I would agree. I think by that time we'll have 4 administrations of the same questions in the same survey, so we will have an opportunity on and off year to look at whether or not the questions are providing the kind of information that we think is useful and actionable as we plan to administer that again the year after next.
Other board comments? Then I'd like to ask if the board is comfortable giving Assistant Superintendent Williams the okay to work on administering the California Healthy Kids Survey as is. Yes. Right?
It's okay with me.
Okay. Okay, I think we have agreement on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think we need to then move to staff report 14-1, our 2019 Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment Results.
Okay, so being mindful of the time, I will.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, I appreciate how you're thorough and you're quick. so when you speak, I like it.
Well, that is high praise. Thank you very much. I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but I do want to just draw your attention to a few slides here in the presentation. And I want to say that earlier I got some questions about how sites are using this data. And I did, as part of the response, indicate that there will be other opportunities to look at this information in some different forms. And so I will let you know that when School accountability report cards come to the board for review and discussion and then potential approval in the months of December and January. That will be another opportunity. And then also when, I just forgot. When, in January, we are going to be bringing the California School Dashboard release, and that also will have academic indicator data. And then this person who asked the question is also on the LCAP Advisory Committee, and so that's another great opportunity to take a look at that. So I do want to start us here on this slide, which speaks to the ways in which this data can inform our practice and the ways in which this data is not super useful. And I'm not going to read these bullets, but I think it's important for us to realize that smarter balanced summative assessment results can give us information about patterns of performance, but we don't get blueprints of questions. So we can't go back and say, based on this standard, what's the reteaching that might be necessary, right? So we refer to it sort of as autopsy data. It gives us a sense of how we did, but we can't go back and make corrections because there's not quite enough information about the items to sort of really guide our work around sort of digging into the standards in particular. And so the ways in which this data, I think, become really useful is when we're able to triangulate it, if you will, with other data sets, other local assessment data, or the kind of information that you're going to find on the California School Dashboard, which provide information about measures not just related to academics, but measures also related to climate for students. So this slide is going to provide an overview of the district's performance. So 79% of students met or exceeded standards on the ELA Summer Balanced Summative Assessment. That's compared with 57% of students countywide and 51% of students statewide. And then in the area of mathematics, 72% of students met or exceeded standards on this assessment compared with 49% of students countywide and 40% of students statewide. And then we really do, I think, try to look at trends and growth rather than looking at from one year to the next sort of the data. So I have provided for you here just a trend. So 2015 was the first year that this assessment was administered. And so you will see that there was in 2018 sort of this dip around which we were all concerned. We seem to have been an anomaly in terms of performance. And so you'll see from 2015 to 2019 there's been some modest growth, and then in the area of mathematics, not as modest, but growth nevertheless. And then these slides show you the performance of grade level cohorts over time. These aren't pure cohorts. Students enter and leave these grade level cohorts all the time. But in general, the purpose of sharing this information is to show you how students performed from one grade to the next. And so when we get down to, for example, this grade level cohort D, this group of students took the assessment for the first year in 2015, and you will see the growth overall that has been made in the area of ELA from 2015 to 2019, and then you'll see the growth that has been made in mathematics over that same period. So we try to do that for every group around which we have more than a couple of years of data so that we can monitor groups in some general sense. The purpose of this data is to show you, again, from 2015 to 2019, how our disaggregated student groups are performing, and I think to remind us that while overall we do have high levels of performance, we do have persistent gaps that exist in the areas of the English language arts and math for some student groups. And so here, just to highlight some of the areas, I think, of celebration. There was grade level cohort group performance growth in 5 of 6 groups in English language arts, math, or both, which means that for each of those grade level groups that we just looked at, there was growth either in English language arts or mathematics or in both subjects on the assessment. From 2018 to 2019, there's been some growth for our students with disabilities
in meeting and exceeding standards in English language arts. And from 2018 to 2019, there's been growth. We realized some growth for our African American students, meeting or exceeding standards in mathematics. Last year when we looked at this data, we were really concerned about 11th grade, and they made both in English language arts and math some growth that I would say is not insignificant. And then I won't read the others, but I do want to highlight this third one here, the last one, which is that from 2015 to 2019, the percentage of Hispanic Latino students meeting or exceeding standards has increased by 10 percentage points in English language arts and 8 percentage points in mathematics. And then we compare that with 7 percentage points and 3 percentage points respectively for all students in AUSD. And I think the purpose of highlighting that is to show that there are areas where we are closing gaps for student groups. And so I think that information can be helpful for us as we look at other groups that are not performing relative to their peers and look for ways that we can improve that performance. Finally, our areas for growth or next steps, they don't change a whole lot from year to year. In terms of implementing progress monitoring, which I know is a grand goal of Dr. Wells, so I'll put that first. Providing social emotional support and intervention, because I think we recognize that students who are healthy and feel comfortable and safe in their schools perform better than students who don't feel safe, don't feel welcome, and don't feel comfortable. We do have a need to continue to provide academic intervention, professional development ongoing, and we continue to support our parent engagement efforts. And I think some next steps for us also include in the dashboard showing some additional measures of student success will be released in December. That report will come to you in January. And then this is we are planning our first year of a 3-year cycle of developing a local control and accountability plan. And Trustee Duran had a beautiful turn of phrase that I think that is repeating here. And she said, we're going to move heavy. And so I think we're really looking forward to an opportunity to really study this data as we think about how to craft a plan that guides us through the next 3 years in supporting all of our students.
Thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Williams. I open that up to board comments.
If I may make a comment, which is I really appreciate all this information, the way it's presented. It's just so clear. Only one area that really concerns me. I was happy to hear that the staff does receive the information and it works with it, and has ways to address it as soon as they get the information. I mean, they're basically looking at it and then putting steps out there of what's going to happen next. But one of the concerns I have is that yes, I think it's important to state that kids are growing, but at the same time, we have to look at, I think, what the baseline was, and making 8 or 10 points is super important. But if you're starting off at 43 and jumping to 53, that's half those population of kids are not doing well. So in other words, I tend not to look at so much the success rate. I look at what percentage of kids are still not making it, which percentage of kids are not at meeting the standard or exceeding the standard. So we definitely have a long way to go, because we're looking at as you pointed out, the numbers anywhere from 50% of the kids that still need a lot of assistance to even when it's only 20%, that's still a significant number of our kids, because especially if that was my kid, then for sure it would be significant. So 20% of our kids that still need a lot of attention, I think is really important to note, and that we will be working on that in LCAP and in different ways at the school sites.
Thank you. Vice President Doss?
And I mean, I also think it's important to acknowledge that there was some improvement in areas, and I think that's great. I just had a couple of questions. One, I noticed in the areas of growth and next steps, you said that those usually remain the same. But for students who aren't doing well and have been consistently not doing well over a long period of time, I'm wondering, are there some different steps or more creative things that we are thinking about or we can put in place to try and help those students that are struggling? I'm just wondering, is the next steps in the areas of growth remain the same, that the results that those students are will not remain the same as well?
Yeah, I think that's a valid comment, and as I said the words, actually, I remembered that you made that comment when we reviewed the single class or student achievement review. I think a part of the work that we have to do in implementing these steps, some of these steps that are identified, is implement them with a higher degree of fidelity, right? Is do a better job of implementing the steps. I think certainly there might be more creative ways to think about possibilities to support students who aren't doing well. And I think that might include asking students what supports they need, right? We don't often include that necessarily as a next step, but I think, sort of from our perspective, right, from my perspective, right, as an educator for almost 20 years, right, there are things that I know when we implement with fidelity, those strategies work, but certainly recognize that there must be things that we are missing, and I'm willing to ask those questions and continue to dig into the data to find out what are we missing in terms of how to support students.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm happy to know that we're going to be seeing this data more, and that this is going to be used by different groups, by teachers, by administrators, by the LCAP committee, to inform our next actions. And board, we're 5 minutes past. I'd like to ask for an extension until 10 o'clock so that we can finish our business.
Including the one item, or just to wrap it up?
Just to wrap up.
Yes, I will second that. To extend it
to 10.
To 10 o'clock.
I think there was our original adjournment.
Yeah. Okay, right. Sarah, you're always catching me.
I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to say we're almost there.
Right, yeah, I was just looking at that. I was focused on the 9:50 thing. Okay. So, I wonder if we can go to the slide of the upcoming agenda items. And while that's being worked over, yeah. So as people look over that, can we consider how we want the board governance handbook, the item that we did not get to come back? That was on review and discussion. Do we want that on review and action? Do we want that on the consent calendar? I assume that everybody got a chance to study it in the agenda packet this week. So it's up to you guys. Go ahead.
Not now, but there's one thing I wanted to add to it.
Oh, okay.
To the future, or to the
handbook?
To the handbook. Just because I think it might be unclear, or the way that we've changed the voting hasn't been clearly stated to anybody. And I thought it was going to be in there.
Okay, I think it was.
Did I miss it?
Well, okay, let's communicate, and then we'll bring it back on review and action. So.
Yeah, it's in something.
Is it in there?
I think it was in the second thing, the handbook, and then there was like rules of the bylaws. There was something like rules of order.
Yeah, it's in rules of order.
Oh, you're right, rules of order. Mm-hmm. They were both attached.
This over. I'd be happy to have it come back as review and action next time with all of this. I would definitely like to have our new norms approved as soon as possible, so we're not continuing to read the old norms at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, great. So,
Or does anybody have anything else about it? Because we could just extend the meeting a little bit longer and just
Except I think it's
wrap it up tonight.
I think it's review and discussion tonight.
Oh, sorry. Is it,
Otherwise,
I agree with what Sarah said at the next meeting.
okay, yeah, it was review and discussion, and I do think that the voting items, check out the rules of order. I think.
She showed it to me.
Okay, got that. As far as I could hear, we didn't have any new agenda items. We referred the PE credit / waiver item to, we'll ask the Instructional Improvement Council to consider that. And we gave direction to staff to proceed with the California Healthy Kids Survey as is, with the idea that next year during an off year, we would take a deep look at whether the questions needed to be updated. Did I miss anything?
Just a little clarification on that. So for the IIC to decide if they're going to talk about it at all, or decide if they're going to possibly make some exemptions?
I thought it was for them to consider the item, so
they will be talking about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And with that,
Excuse me, I just had some expectation that they would be coming back to us and making some kind of presentation, like with their comments or recommendations or whatever. Is that appropriate?
yeah, I think they should, but I'm not sure that they would be coming. Yeah, it may not be soon, and it's possible that they would give a written report rather than a board presentation. Okay. And with that, we are adjourned.